Anderson Cooper, AC360, CNN weeknights 10 Eastern.
Well, you'll notice the public debate over the proposed Islamic Center near Ground Zero has died down of late. It doesn't mean passions still aren't very strong on it, but one candidate is hoping to keep the debate front and center. Her name is Renee Elmers, and she's a Republican candidate for Congress, not in New York, but in North Carolina. Hasn't stopped her, though, from making the proposed mosque a centerpiece of her campaign. She has a new commercial out this week about the mosque controversy, and listen very carefully to the language she uses, basically interchanging the word Muslim and the word terrorist.
After the Muslims conquered Jerusalem and Cordoba and Constantinople, they built victory mosques. And now they want to build a mosque by Ground Zero. Where does Bob Etheridge stand? He won't say, won't speak out, won't take a stand.
The terrorists haven't won, and we should tell them in plain English, no, there will never be a mosque at Ground Zero. I'm Renee Elmers, and I approve this ad.
Well, a spokesman for her Democratic opponent, Congressman Bob Etheridge, who's mentioned there, says the congressman never thought building the mosque so close to Ground Zero is a good idea. The spokesman also added, quote, Mrs. Elmers is desecrating this hallowed ground with her obvious and offensive attempt to raise her profile. I spoke with Renee Elmers a short time ago. Ms. Elmers, in your ad, you use the term Muslim and the term terrorist basically interchangeably. You say Muslims want to build a mosque at Ground Zero, the terrorists haven't won, and we should tell them in plain English, no, there will never be a mosque at Ground Zero. You're essentially equating Muslims with terrorists.
Well, to be honest, I think that you could make that assumption, but you know that's not giving me the benefit of the doubt.
But I mean, that's what you're saying in your speech. I mean, your words are very carefully selected.
The words are carefully selected, but that is certainly not what I'm intending to say. I am not intending to say that all Muslims are terrorists. Basically, what I am saying, sir, is that there were terrorists who attacked us, they were Islamic jihadists, and as a result of that, we have seen the devastation on 9/11, and we are still living with that.
But the people who are building the mosque, but the people who are building the Islamic Center are not terrorists, and in your final sentence...
Do you know that, sir? Do you know that, sir? Because, you know, we don't even know who is the donors to that.
Do you believe that the imam behind this, the imam who's the
we
front
don't
of this,
know that.
You think he may be a terrorist?
Well, I don't know that much about the imam. I don't think any of us know that much about the imam.
Wait a minute.
Uncertainty. That is where the uncertainty is.
But have you done any research about him? Because the State Department sends him out and has sent him out for years.
Yes, sir. You are correct, and those are some of the concerns that we have. Our district.
Wait a minute. So you believe he may be a terrorist?
Sir, I don't know what his intentions are. I do not know that, and that is my point. I am standing up for the people of District 2 in North Carolina who say that they are very concerned with the moral decline in this country and where our leaders are bringing us. Yeah. And the person that I'm running against, Congressman Bob Etheridge, has not taken a stand on this.
Well, actually, that's not true. I'm sorry, that's not true. His campaign says... stop. His campaign says he doesn't believe this mosque should be built.
But that wasn't until that was as a response of this commercial that we're running against him. He was silent on it. We've run
okay, so
four
now
blogs.
Are you going? But wait, but you just said he's not taking a stand on it. You know he has taken a stand.
He's not taking a stand on it. Making a comment coming from his campaign, he has not been seen saying these things. That was actually a comment that came from one of his campaign staffers.
All right. You also talk about victory mosques that Muslims built hundreds of years ago on the site of military conquest. But don't all religions do that? I mean, you're Catholic. Rome was conquered from the pagans and their altars destroyed so the Vatican could be built. Christian conquistadors and pilgrims to America all destroyed local religions and built their own houses of worship. Is the Vatican a victory church?
No, that is
not?
You are incorrect in your statement, sir.
Wait. Just about every religion, when a religion in the past used to conquer in a war, they wouldn't build a house of worship. The Catholic Church didn't build houses of worship on the sites of other religions.
Now, we all know about religion. I'm a Christian.
Yes or no?
I am a Catholic. Right. Yes, I am. No, you are wrong in your assumptions. I guess what I could ask you is, are you anti-religion? Are you anti-Christian in your thinking?
That's like the lowest response I've ever heard from a candidate, I got to tell you.
Really?
Ma'am.
Really? I really don't think that is.
So the history of Rome was not conquered from another group.
Well, Rome was a pagan nation before
Right.
it was a Christian nation.
Right. It was conquered by the pagans.
I am losing your point. And the fact of the matter is we're getting way off of the subject matter.
No, I'm asking about your commercial.
I'm
I'm asking about the accuracy of your commercial. You say these are victory mosques. Couldn't the same thing be said about just about every religious body?
I have history to back me up. We are talking about the possibility of a mosque being built on Ground Zero.
Well,
we are not talking about another Christian religion coming in and building a church. In fact, if anything, there's a Greek Orthodox church that was destroyed at that site that still hasn't been rebuilt.
Okay, you actually do know
that either.
Again, you do know it's not on Ground Zero. It's 2 blocks away from Ground Zero. It's actually not just a mosque. It's an Islamic center, and it's actually being built on a Burlington coat factory. So just for accuracy's sake,
it was a Burlington coat factory. Yes, sir, I realize that, and I realize that it's 2 blocks from it.
Right.
But we're talking about hallowed ground. Is there a line of demarcation that indicates to us where some victims may have died and some may have not, and debris from that terrible, awful disaster that happened?
Right.
We're all Americans. This is an American issue, and the people of District 2 in North Carolina are very concerned about it.
Well,
and that's why I'm speaking out on it.
You also say on your website, and I quote, that the Obama administration has been spending foreign aid money to build mosques in Muslim nations. You do know that's something that started under George Bush in 2001, and you do know that it's not.
And that's fine.
Right. And just for accuracy's sake, because you don't mention this on your website, this is actually outreach by the State Department to restore historic sites, including some mosques, but it also restores Christian sites and Buddhist sites. And actually the mosques are of a fraction of the overall spending. That's correct, right?
Well, I'm not trying to make justification for what they're spending it on.
You brought this up as if...
The fact of the matter is our State Department is spending money building mosques around the world. And we are at war right now in Afghanistan and Iraq. And there are radical Muslims who really want to do harm to us.
Right. Do you know
that is what the issue is.
Do you know
now, we are not fighting radical Christians. We are fighting radical Muslims.
Right.
And as long as there are Americans who are dying, this is an issue.
Do you know who we're supporting in the war in Afghanistan? Do you know what government we're actually propping up? It's a Muslim government. You're aware of that?
That is absolutely correct, and that is why it is so important that we do these things. For that very reason.
That we do what things? That we build mosques and support cultural ideas around the country?
That we help those people around the world who are peaceful people.
Your opponent's campaign says that not only is your opponent against building the Islamic Center, but they told Politico.com, and I want you to be able to respond to their criticism. They say Ms. Elmers is desecrating this hallowed ground with her obvious and offensive attempt to raise her profile. No further proof is needed that she will say anything to get elected.
Well, there you go. When you don't have anything else to say and you don't have anything to stand on because of your voting record, you are going to lash out like that. You know, calling us names and saying that we're terrible, awful people for our way of thinking. All we're doing is reflecting what we've seen in the district and the people that I have talked with who are so concerned with where our country is going. I am not running for a popularity contest in New York or D.C. or on television. I am running for the people of District 2, North Carolina, who are good, hardworking Christian people who just want to turn this country around.
What about Muslims? Do you want their vote?
Well, absolutely. I want everyone's vote. As a nurse, I've taken care of every race, creed, color, religion, everything. That's what I was trained to do, and to respect their traditions. And I will continue to do that as a congresswoman in Washington.
Renee Elmers, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, I must say, I've never had a candidate suggest I'm anti-religion because I question them about their religious claims in a commercial. For the record, I'm not taking a position on whether this Islamic Center should be built or not. I'm not taking a position for or against Ms. Elmers. That's not my job. My job is to get facts and to point out factually incorrect statements. So after that interview, I wondered, was I completely wrong about the history of religious conquest hundreds of years ago? I can't believe we're debating this. But we decided to invite in best-selling author Bruce Feiler, whose books include America's Prophet and Walking the Bible, which was on the New York Times bestseller list for a year and a half. So, Bruce, you're a religious scholar. You've actually been to all the sites in Ms. Elmers' ads. Are they victory mosques?
Well, I have to say, as someone who writes about and has written 4 books about religion, this is the first time I can think that the history of religion has been brought into a campaign ad to begin with. You know, and like a lot of this hate-mongering, Anderson, there is a kernel of truth to it. And as you said, when Muslims got to Jerusalem and to Cordoba and then to Constantinople, they in fact did build mosques. I've never, in 15 years in writing about this, heard them called victory mosques. There's nothing in them to indicate any of that. But as you said, this is completely consistent with the history of religion. When King David conquered Jerusalem, his son, King Solomon, built the temple. And then when, as you also said, when Rome became Christian, they built St. Peter's, one of the great churches ever built. So this is a completely consistent thing in history, and more to the point, and kind of lost in this whole conversation, I think, is there's 600,000 Muslims who live in and around New York City. And in fact, there are mosques in this area. There, in fact, was a Muslim prayer room in the World Trade Centers, to her reference about the trade centers. So that the point is, it just is unusual and frankly a little frightening that a political candidate in North Carolina or my hometown of Savannah is going to comment on where Muslims in New York City can worship or not.
Well, so if you call a mosque a victory mosque, then would you, I mean, by that logic, could you call the Vatican a victory church? Or well, St. Peter's a victory church? I mean, if you're going down that road?
If you want to use that language, I don't think it's constructive language. And as you rightly said also, when the Pilgrims got to Plymouth, the first thing they built, in fact, was a church. But I think that we need to step back here and ask, why is it that several months into this, we are still talking about it? Part of it is sensitivity to 9/11. We just saw President Ahmadinejad yesterday suggest it might be an American plot, and the Americans and other people rightly walked out of the chamber, and President Obama denounced it today. I think there's a deeper question in America, and that is somehow what's going on with Muslims different? Are they going to be welcomed into this country, or do we need to treat them differently? You mentioned America's Prophet, a book I wrote about the role of the Bible in American history, which is just out this week. There's a chapter in there on George Whitefield. He's essentially the founder of evangelical Christianity. And in the 18th century, there were assassination attempts. Trash was thrown on him. He was kicked out of churches, pushed to the end of the city. Yet for what? For saying we should read the Bible directly and we should have a direct relationship with God. So this happened to evangelicals in the 18th century. They became mainstream as we see today. To Catholics in the 19th century. To Jews in the 20th century. What's going on with Muslims today is the same process. And for people who think it's different today, in almost every way, it is very similar. And in the lifetimes of almost everybody watching us tonight, we have seen a wholesale relation, how Jews and Christians have related to one another, and that's going to happen with Muslims. It's going to be messy. This is what coexistence is about. But there's every reason to believe that this is part of a larger narrative of Muslims being accepted in America.
Bruce Feiler, appreciate your perspective. Thanks very much.